All right, you crazy fuckers, welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be back.
This time we're going deep into some seriously weird shit. Monarchies. You know, crowns, thrones, all that jazz.
Oh, yes, because nothing says modern society like some inbred family calling the shots for centuries.
Right. And lucky for you, we've got a bona fide brainiac here to break down this whole monarchy mess. So get ready for some serious, mind-blowing shit.
All right, well, let's cut the crap and get right to it.
Yeah, let's cut the crap.
So, at its core, a monarchy is basically a system of government where one person, the monarch, is the head honcho of the country.
Head honcho. I like that.
They usually rule for life or until they decide they've had enough and abdicate.
Abdicate. Sounds kind of fancy for just saying, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Pretty much.
Is there like a good example of that?
Yeah, I think Edward VIII ditching the entire UK for some American chick.
No shit, really. Talk about balls.
You know, I had some serious fuck you energy right there.
That's one way to put it.
So, okay, one ruler for life. Is that always how it goes down? Not exact. Monarchies come in different flavors, you see. You've got your absolute monarchies where the monarch has, absolute power, no questions asked.
Okay.
Then there are constitutional monarchies where the monarch's power is limited by a constitution.
Right.
And somewhere in between, you've got your semi-constitutional monarchies.
So it's like a spectrum of how much of a dictator they are, basically.
Yeah. Kinda. Think of it like a sliding scale of control.
A sliding scale.
Right.
All right. I like it.
For example, you've got Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
Your classic absolute monarchy.
Absolute.
The king controls everything, the government, the military, even religious institutions.
Wow.
He's like the big kahuna, the top dog.
Sounds like a pretty sweet gig if you ask me.
Maybe if you're into that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, I could get into that.
Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got your constitutional monarchies like the UK.
Right, the UK.
The Queen,
Right.
She's the head of state, but her power is limited by, you guessed it, the Constitution.
Yeah, but she's still the head of the Church of England, right? That always seemed kind of fucked up considering the whole separation of church and state thing.
It's definitely ironic, but it does kind of highlight how a constitutional monarchy can work. The monarch's role is largely symbolic, like, representing the nation rather than actually running it.
Okay, so they're like a figurehead, basically.
They would do much.
All right, so we've got the dictators on one end and the figureheads on the other. Where does a place like Monaco fall into all this?
Ah, Monaco. Now that's your semi-constitutional monarchy. The prince has a decent chunk of power, but it's not just about politics.
Right.
Think massive land ownership business ventures. The dude's got his fingers in all the pies.
He's like a CEO with a crown.
You could say that. He's got political influence, but his wealth and business holdings give him a different kind of power.
Interesting.
Now, are you ready for the real mindfuck?
Hit me with it.
Elective monarchies.
Wait, what? You're telling me some of these royal assholes are actually voted in? What the actual fuck?
Okay, chill your jets. It's not like a popularity contest. More like a really exclusive club picking their leader.
Okay.
Take the Pope, for example, elected for life by the cardinals.
Oh, wow.
Talk about pressure.
That's a lifetime appointment I would not want.
Yeah, and then you've got Malaysia, where the king is chosen from a group of hereditary rulers.
A monarchy within a monarchy. That's crazy.
Right.
Okay, my brain hurts a little. So most of these monarchies, it's all about family, right? Passing down power like some fucked up heirloom.
You got it. Hereditary succession. That's the name of the game. Typically, the eldest child gets the throne.
Makes sense.
It's called primogeniture.
Primogeniture.
Yeah.
So it's like a really messed up game of musical chairs, but with crowns and a whole lot of inbreeding?
Pretty much. But hold on. It wasn't always the oldest son who got the throne. Historically, things could get messy when you had multiple kids all vying for power.
So basically, it's all fun and games until someone gets stabbed in the back for a shiny hat.
You could say that. And let's not forget about the ladies.
What about the ladies?
For centuries, they got screwed over by this bullshit thing called Salic law.
Salic law? What the hell's that?
It basically said women couldn't inherit the throne.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's some serious medieval bullshit.
Totally patriarchal bullshit.
So how did we finally get past that sexist crap?
Well, some countries like Sweden finally got their shit together and adopted equal primogeniture.
Okay.
That means the oldest child, regardless of gender, gets the throne. Even the UK eventually hopped on the bandwagon, but, they took their sweet time as usual.
Late to the party as always.
Right.
But what happens if there are no kids? Is it like a royal Hunger Games, everyone for themselves?
Not quite. They go down what's called the collateral lines of succession.
Collateral lines?
Siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole damn family tree.
Wow.
But trust me, it can get messy as hell. It's like trying to untangle Christmas lights after your drunk uncle has decorated the tree.
So we're talking Potential for some serious royal drama. I'm in.
Believe me, history's full of it. Now here's another juicy tidbit. Ever heard of pretenders to the throne?
Pretenders. Like some dude can just show up and be like, yo, I'm the rightful king, and people actually buy it.
Okay, it's not that simple, but
Oh.
there have been cases where people have claimed a throne even though it was already occupied.
I mean, sure.
Some tried to use military force, others claimed like a divine mandate. Basically, whatever bullshit excuse they could cook up.
Like a royal catfish, basically.
Exactly. It all comes down to legitimacy, bloodlines, and sometimes just plain old audacity.
All right, so let me get this straight. Monarchies are this crazy mix of history, power, and a whole lot of fucked up family drama,
Yeah,
right?
you nailed it.
So we've covered the basics of what a monarchy is, the different flavors of monarchy, and how this whole succession thing works, even when it doesn't.
We've laid the groundwork.
Yeah, we've laid the groundwork. But there's got to be more to this. Like, what about all the fancy ceremonies and the weird rules these royals had to follow?
Oh, buckle up, Buttercup. We're just getting started. Yeah, we've laid the groundwork, but now let's talk about the real juicy shit, the power dynamics of these monarchies.
Okay, let's get into it. How did these monarchs keep their asses on the throne for so long? I mean, centuries of rule. That's insane.
Think religion,
Okay, religion.
military might.
Military might,
Uh-huh.
and a whole lot of propaganda.
Classic trifecta bullshit.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's how they played the game, you know? Take the concept of the divine right of kings, for instance.
Divine right. What the hell is that?
Basically, this belief that monarchs were like handpicked by God himself to rule.
So they were God's chosen puppets, basically.
Exactly. It was a pretty convenient excuse for absolute power.
Yeah, I see how that works. Make the people think you're answerable to God, not to them.
Smart move, right? It made questioning the monarch's authority a big no-no. It wasn't just disobeying a king, it was like going against God's will.
Right, challenging God himself.
Yeah.
That'll keep the peasants in line.
And then you've got the military monarchs often had their own private armies loyal to them, personally, not to the state.
So like their own personal hit squad. Pretty much. It gave them a huge advantage when it came to crushing rebellions and keeping things under control.
Right. You keep those peasants in check.
Exactly. And then there's the propaganda.
Propaganda. How did that work?
They used everything at their disposal. Art, literature, even architecture.
Architecture.
Yeah, they'd build giant monuments and stuff to project their power.
So it's like those ancient Egyptian pharaohs with their giant pyramids showing off their power and wealth.
Bingo! It's all about creating an aura of invincibility, making the monarchs seem larger than life.
It's all about the image.
Right.
Like, gotta look the part if you want to rule.
Exactly. But all this power, it couldn't have been all sunshine and roses, could it?
Yeah, I'm guessing absolute power corrupts. Absolutely right.
You got it. We're talking tyranny, corruption, oppression.
Yeah.
You name it, some monarch probably did it.
Give us the dirt. What kind of messed up shit went down?
Well, there are countless examples, but just look at some of those Roman emperors.
Ah.
Caligula, for instance, dude, was supposedly batshit crazy.
Caligula. Okay, what did he do?
Well, supposedly, he declared war on Neptune, the god of the sea. And get this, he made his horse a senator.
You made his horse a senator. What the fuck?
Yeah, the guy was definitely off his rocker. And then you've got Nero, who supposedly fiddled while Rome burned.
Near fiddled while Rome burned classic.
Right. Talk about a lack of priorities.
Yeah, priorities were definitely not his strong suit.
But it wasn't just the Romans, you know? There were plenty of tyrannical monarchs throughout history. Henry VIII, Ivan the Terrible, the list goes on and on.
So basically, if you were a monarch with a bad temper, you could pretty much do whatever the fuck you wanted.
Pretty much. Yeah, for them it was probably a pretty sweet deal. But for everyone else, not so much.
Sounds like a nightmare.
You got it.
Okay, so absolute power equals absolute corruption.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about these constitutional monarchies, though? They're supposed to be all about checks and balances, right?
In theory, yes.
In a theory.
The monarch's power is limited by a constitution, and there are other branches of government to keep things in check.
So less room for abuse of power, you're saying?
Theoretically, yes. Theoretically.
Even in constitutional monarchies, there's always the potential for abuse of power.
Seriously.
Yeah.
You're telling me these guys can still pull some shady shit even with a constitution breathing down their necks?
It's not always about blatant tyranny. It can be more subtle. Influence and policy behind the scenes, using their position to enrich themselves and their buddies, that kind of thing.
So they're still playing the game just with a different set of rules.
Exactly. It's not exactly a level playing field even with a constitution in place.
All right, so no matter how you slice it, monarchies are inherently flawed, even the so-called good ones.
It's a system built on power and privilege.
So why the hell do they still exist then? Haven't we learned anything from history?
It's complicated. There are a lot of factors at play.
Like what?
Well, some people argue that monarchies provide stability and continuity, especially in times of crisis. Others see them as a symbol of national unity and tradition.
Tradition, yeah, that's a big one.
And then let's be real, some people just love the pomp and circumstance of it all, the fancy ceremonies, the crowns, the whole 9 yards.
You're telling me some people are actually nostalgic for the days of kings and queens? Get the fuck out of here.
It's true. There are still hardcore monarchists out there who believe in the divine right of kings and all that jazz.
Oh, that's wild.
They argue that monarchs are raised to rule, instilled with a sense of duty and responsibility that you just can't find in a regular politician.
Sounds like a load of bullshit to me.
Maybe. But hey, to each their own right.
True, true. All right, so we've covered the power dynamics of monarchies, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly.
We've scratched the surface.
We scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But what about the day-to-day life of these monarchs? Do they just sit around all day eating grapes and bossing people around?
That's the Hollywood version.
Yep.
The reality was much more complex and often quite boring.
Okay, spill the tea.
Eh.
What was life really like for these crowned heads? Okay, so we've talked about the history of these monarchies and how they held on to power for so long. But what I really want to know is, what's the deal with these monarchies today? Like, are they just chilling in their castles, or do they actually do anything?
Well, it's a mixed bag, really.
Hmm.
Some monarchs, like the Queen of England, are mostly just figureheads.
Figureheads.
Yeah, they represent the country, like a symbol of national unity and tradition, but they don't really have any real political power.
So they're basically just a really expensive mascot for the country.
Pretty much. But even though they don't have a ton of political power, they can still influence public opinion. They're like a celebrity with a crown.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about the other monarchs? Are there any who are still running the show, like those old-school tyrants we talked about?
You might be surprised to hear this, but yes, there are still a few absolute monarchies out there. Mostly in the Middle East, places like Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. The king there has complete control over the government, the military, everything.
It's like they're stuck in the Middle Ages or something.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't exactly embraced democracy.
So basically, we've got this whole spectrum of monarchies, from figureheads to dictators. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for power-hungry assholes.
You could say that. It's one of the things that makes monarchies so fascinating. They can be so different depending on where you look.
Totally. But here's a question for you. What kind of person actually wants to be a monarch in this day and age?
Yeah.
Like, is it all about power, or is there something else going on?
Honestly, I think it's probably a mix of things. You've got the power aspect for sure, but there's also a sense of duty that comes with being a monarch.
Yeah.
They're born into this role and they feel a responsibility to uphold the traditions of their family and their country.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a lot of pressure too, right? Like, you're constantly in the public eye and everyone's got an opinion about what you should or shouldn't be doing.
Oh, absolutely. The scrutiny is intense, and then there's the constant threat of assassination and terrorism.
Yeah, being a monarch is definitely not all fun and games.
Not to mention the whole lack of privacy thing. Every aspect of their lives is dissected by the media.
It's like living in a gilded cage.
You got...
But, okay, enough about the downsides. What about the perks? Do these modern monarchs actually do anything worthwhile besides looking regal and attending fancy dinners?
Some of them do, actually. Some monarchs are really active in charity work and social causes.
So they're like royal influencers, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And others use their position to promote their country on the global stage, trying to attract investment and tourism.
Okay, so they're not all just sitting around counting their money.
Definitely not. But at the end of the day, the question remains, are monarchies relevant in the 21st century?
That's a good question. Yeah. It's hard to justify a system where one person inherits power just because of their bloodline.
Right. But then again, monarchies can provide a sense of stability and continuity, which can be appealing in times of uncertainty and change.
Yeah, I can see that. And let's be real, there's still something kind of cool about the whole monarchy thing. The history, the traditions, the pageantry, it's all pretty captivating.
Agreed. Monarchies are a product of a different time, but they still have a hold on our imagination.
So what's the final verdict on monarchies then? Good, bad, or just plain weird?
I think it's all of the above. They're a complex and fascinating part of human history with a legacy that's both positive and negative.
Well said. All right, folks, that's our deep dive into the world of monarchies. We've covered the history, the power dynamics, the crazy lifestyles, and even the psychological impact of being a royal dextry. It's been a wild ride.
And hopefully we've learned a thing or two about the nature of power, the allure of tradition, and the enduring appeal of a good story.
Exactly. So if you're ever looking to escape the monotony of everyday life, just fire up Wikipedia and get lost in the rabbit hole of royal history. It's a world full of drama, intrigue, and more than a few WTF moments.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're out of here.
Peace out.
Crazy bastards.